to, it's my absolute delight to be able to welcome the Minister, Alannah MacTiernan, to speak now. We had been lobbying the Minister's office for a couple of months, inviting her to come and give a talk today. And obviously they've been in caretaker mode for a period of time and couldn't commit because we weren't sure if they'd be returned to office. But congratulations, Minister, that your government returned office in an absolute majority last weekend. And it was a great pleasure yesterday to be told that she was able to come and talk this afternoon. So I'd like to welcome the Honourable Alannah MacTiernan to the stage, the Minister for Regional Development, Agriculture and Food, and importantly the hydrogen industry, and it's a personal favourite of mine. I know she's not going to talk about that today, but geez, I love the hydrogen industry, and I hope maybe the next year or so that we can actually do a symposium like this on the hydrogen industry. It'd be fantastic. And so today Alannah will be speaking on WA's government's vision for sustainable housing and hemp agriculture. So thank you, Minister.
Thanks so much. Fantastic to be here on Noongar land. We always love celebrating that deep connection that we have. Look, I have to apologise. I was only sworn in again. I only got the job again at midday yesterday. And I've yet to reassemble all of the staff because everyone has to go out and then we've got to get and as many as we can back in. So I don't have any presentations. But look, I guess the first thing that I should do is just note the very sad death of Andrew Reeve earlier this week. Andrew was the first Department of Primary Industries staff member in a hemp role outside the regulatory role. And I know many people here worked with him, and I know his colleagues in the department are all very, very sad at Andrew's early passing, and I pass on the condolences of the government to his family, to friends, and to all of the colleagues inside and outside the department. Now, look, this is a real. I guess part of the request I had to come and speak here today was to actually talk about what is going to be our vision for agriculture going forward. We spent a lot of time in the first term trying to rebuild aspects of the department, and in particular, we focused in agriculture of trying to rebuild the R&D capability inside the department, restoring many of our research centres, particularly in regional areas, Frank Wise and Kununurra, the Carnarvon Research Station, the Drylands Research Institute out in Merredin, and that's been, and the Katanning livestock facility in the south of the state. And that will be very much part of the work, and some of the things that we're doing with this industry are part of that. But I guess the other really important and the big emphasis that we're going to place on, particularly in the next few years, is that focus on climate resilience. How do we actually deal with climate change, which is coming at agriculture from two different directions? One is that it is making it harder to farm because we are so very much hotter, and in the southern half of the state very much drier. How do we make a go of farming in that environment? How do we deal with the increased expectation, quite rightfully, of our consumers that the products that are produced by farmers are more carbon, have a lower carbon footprint? So how do we deal with those issues? And I think I want to go one beyond that and say, how do we revision agriculture as not being actually the cause of the problem, but indeed being very much part of the solution to climate change? How can we rehydrate our landscapes? How can we build soil carbon? How can we revegetate and restore the rangelands? And it's actually a very exciting area, and I think there is a great deal that is possible for us to really press the reset button. And there are many farmers that are wanting to get into that space. There are probably equally, I'd have to say, sitting around tables with groups of farmers from various areas who say, well, you know, it's getting hotter and dry, but love, we're still making a bloody good quid, and we're not too fussed about this. And part of the way that we're trying to deal with that is we've got some project work that has been done on the accounting for natural capital, because we think if it was possible to get people to understand what might be happening longer term and how that is going to be factored into their books, how that is going to be factored in by those people that they rely on for financing. And there's no doubt that groups like Rabobank, ANZ and many of the other big agricultural lenders are very much looking at the carbon equation when they assess what to invest in directly, and certainly what to provide loan funding to. So it's that is really going to be our very much our focus. Now, as you know, we've been strong supporters here of the hemp industry. I think it's always very important that we're careful about how we describe our progress, and there is, and without wanting to dampen enthusiasm, I think it's important that we don't have a sense of boosterism, that I think all of us understand that there is extraordinary potential, but we do have to acknowledge that there are extraordinary challenges. I mean, we compare, so farmers are making a decision, weeds, lupins, barley, or hemp, and we are at a very, very early stage of the takeoff of this industry, because we haven't had that breeding, we haven't had that work done, and I think Gail referenced some of the things that have been done, but we haven't seen. We saw early on a bit of an expansion over the last couple of years, and we funded a couple of two very specific projects, three actually, in terms of varietal studies, and I'd have to say, probably you would say, that all three of those did not succeed, but that's not unusual in the early stages of an industry, and that's why I think it is so important. Gail referenced this, but it is so important that we've now got the department. So I think early on we gave out some grants to different groups to do some of this work. Now we're really trying to sort of mainstream this in the R&D capability of the department. So we have got some very detailed studies that are being undertaken into those crop varieties that are going to hopefully work in WA, and we've got and we're looking at a whole range of different axes. We're looking at the performance on different planting types, so the plantings that are going on down in our Horticultural Research Institute. Some will plant in October, some December, and then in the Bustle, and some in January, and then some will be done in March, and likewise in Bustleton. We're also looking at various intensities of planting, and looking at how we might start getting some really solid information and reliability in those species. We're also working on a trial in Harvey, and we've got another trial, our new trial for the Frank Wyatt Centre up in Kununurra is underway, and we're also competing for some AgriFutures funding for more northern trials, because I think, Rob, I missed the beginning of your speech, but I understand that you were talking about the potential in the north, and we agree with that, and we are trying to take that forward as well. So we're doing that work. We're doing the work in the livestock trials. I think Gail might have mentioned looking at what can be done in terms of the impact on the animals fed with industrial hemp residues, and so far it's showing that there is low levels of THC do accumulate in the subcutaneous fat, which means there will have to be a withholding period. We can't get people getting too high after they have their lamb chops. It certainly seems that the plant itself is that there is reasonable weight gain, so in terms of its nutritional value for the animals, it sounds good. Now they're looking at phase 2, the cannabinoid pharmacokinetics, what happens to the meat with those cannabinoids. So I do agree with, I think was it Dave who spoke earlier, and he's, there is a bit of demonisation person. Now I can't see what would be too much of a problem if we had some cannabinoid in the sheep and cattle, but nevertheless, it's important because we're not at that point in our community yet that we really understand this. And again, it's all going to that, making sure that we've got as many uses as possible. We've done the research so we can go forward with a sound basis. Now, Dave also made that. Then I think Gail was talking also of the difference between the medicinal cannabis and the whole, in some sense, demonisation of the plant. I think most people here would be extremely interested to know that it does look like, albeit with quite a small primary vote, that the legalised marijuana party may have got a candidate up in the southwest, and that might create an interesting vehicle for some debate within our community. But I certainly think that we need to be, and I've been very strongly advocating that we look really at those cannabinoids and look at the beneficial, the value of those, and that we move more towards allowing something other than hemp seed to be used for as a food product. Now we've had a little bit. I think that they've moved it down, or moved it up the scale in the poisons level, so it's not as they've made a little bit of progress, but there's still much more to be done on that. And as I said, we see amazing things happening in this area in the United States, and it is important that we understand that that's probably where we're going to end up too. So hang in there. But we do have to get, before we're going to get significant numbers of farmers to give up making lots of money out of wheat and barley and lupins and canola, we're really going to have to get an increased reliability in this product. And really that is what we're focusing on, doing these trials, making sure that we've got the agronomy, we've got the plant breeding, that will enable there to be greater reliability in relation to these plants. Now we also understand that we do need to support, and we have been supporting a whole heap of processing projects, and I'm very keen to get down. I don't know whether the decorticator from Gary's Ridgeview Building Company that we gave 100,000 to, I believe it is here. I hope it's has begun to operate it. I think we've given some additional funds towards doing further development at that facility. because we really do want to see this go forward as a building product. I personally would love to see it as a building product in the north of the state. So it would actually really, instead of having to ship building materials thousands of kilometres, that we could actually generate those building materials in the Kimberley itself. So we've also, doing work on the establishment of industry standards for production of certified WA hemp food product. And we've been working with Miracle, who I believe presented here earlier today, and we've been helping them with the providing some facilities at Deeper. We have the dam down in at Raintree, which will be opened very shortly, I believe, with its cannabis sativa based beverages. So that's also been something that has been the subject of a grant. So I'm not going to go through all the different grants that we've given, but just to say that we are here to support you. We've got to get the basics right. We've really got to drive down and get the basics right before we've got an opportunity to really go out and do the real conversion. So I think before we go out and try to en masse convert farmers, let's get this right. Let's get our basics up and running and have something that is very credible, and that, I think, is the way to build the industry. So I wouldn't necessarily lament at this point of time that this is a relatively small group. We are in the early stages, and we've got to get some of those basics right over the next couple of years. And then, armed with all that information and capability, I think we can go forward and encourage people to expand into this great industry. So, thank you all very much. I am happy to have a bit of a dialogue. Never like to sit and my nice hemp shirt, like a new hemp shirt last time.
Yeah. I was very tempted to wear my hemp shirts as well today, but they didn't really go well with the jacket, so I thought better of it. We are a bit ahead of schedule anyway, and I'm sure there's some questions for the Minister. So who'd like to start? Yeah. Would you like to be one?
Thank you very much for that. Lots of information as usual. One of the things I'm really interested in is you spoke about funding that has been made available in the past for development of new ideas, R&D, to private companies. What's the future going to hold in that space?
Are you talking about
in grant
hemp
funding?
In particular?
Yeah, industrial hemp, especially in the fibre industry, I guess. That's where my interest is.
Look, very early on when we came into government and first interfaced with the industry, we put aside. We actually found a small bucket of money to make hemp-specific grants. So this was a small bucket of money that was just specifically made available for that industry, and that has finished. But what we are now, because we now have a range, and since that time we have developed a range of different funding opportunities. So we have the regional economic development grants, which I think that might have been Steve Burbeck, for example, in Denmark has used that scheme. We've got the value add grants, which are available for all processing, any type of value add to agricultural production. So there's two, and then we've got various voucher schemes to develop expertise, so individuals can can obtain expert advice to help them move forward into new areas with their industry. So we don't have a plan at the moment to have a specific funding round for hemp, just as we don't really for any other specific industry, but we think that now that you are, and we've got many examples where people are competing successfully for these other grants, and we've also got this onto the agenda of our R&D within the department. So we've got capability within the department doing trials in the southwest and in the Kimberley. And if there were someone that was interested in looking at doing some of this stuff, if there was any evidence that Carnarvon might, for example, be another prospective place we could look at doing some trials there.
By the way, I was in Maple River a few weeks ago when Gary had successfully processed his very first batch.
Yeah, well, but, I'm pretty sure he should have told us about it. But Thank you. But that's good to hear. It's very good.
Hi Alannah, I'm just curious about water. We all know that water is essential for growing any kind of crop, and if it's going to go up north, has there been any research to how this can go forward, or sustainable uses of water?
Right. Well, one thing we do know about the Kimberley is that on all the climate models, they're actually projected to have more, not less water. Now, it's not a huge amount more, but they're already, much of the Kimberley is, and we're not talking about necessarily irrigated crops here, or it could be, but we have got, so we're not anticipating less water being available in the Kimberley. The climate model tells us there will be a small increase in water availability. But one of the positive things about this, in my view, and indeed cotton in a place like the Kimberley, is that it is an annual crop. And if you don't get the water, you don't get to grow it. And I know people just, got locked in our head, we can't do anything with water because of what happened in Murray-Darling. I mean, Murray-Darling is a complete basket case because it is completely and utterly over-allocated. And they are not, because of political reasons, they are not preserving the environmental flows, and even those environmental flows that have been deemed to be necessary are probably themselves not reliable. But what we see with crops like hemp and cotton in the Kimberley, where they're annual crops, and that's evident, in the Murray-Darling, so much of the problem are tree crops, because people put their trees in and they can't just not water them for a year because there's no water. But if you've got a properly disciplined system, annuals are a good way of dealing with this issue of variable water flow, because you can say, we're not, no water, you can't grow this year.
Thanks, Alannah. Is it fair to say that the Department of Ag has now distributed its initiative or its support of hemp R&D across all levels, or across a variety of initiatives? You mentioned climate survival as being a strategic maybe initiative of the Ag Department. Perhaps you could talk to a couple of other strategic initiatives that the Ag Department has come up with for its next whatever 5-year plan. And so unless you're just growing hemp or interested in producing another better seed, are there other ways that you could find grants that might incidentally support the hemp industry? For example, I built my house out of hemp. Is there some talk about the carbon capture credits that I might be able to get? if I grow some hemp on my particular paddock instead of some more truffles, is there some kind of support that I could get because I am in fact working along one or another of your new initiatives in the ag department?
Interesting. We've got a couple of funds that have been set up just recently to look at this whole issue of climate resilience and carbon sequestration. Now, we are just, as I said, sworn in at midday yesterday. I had a meeting at 2:30 with the department about setting the agenda on those and how we go about maximising the value of those funds that we have got in this space. And we certainly have been focusing on the carbon sequestration and development of soil carbon, but it is an interesting issue as to whether or not there would be some way of giving and incentivising hemp that was used for building on the basis of it being of it positively secreting sequestering carbon. Certainly something we're prepared to have a look at. Obviously, one of the really beneficial things will be is if, you know, we as a society, I think, across the globe, introduced pricing on carbon, because that would start really setting the market signals. Now, of course, we need to understand, of course, people will want to understand just exactly what the decortication process, what is the energy budget, if you like, in the production of that product compared to the things that it might replace. But we're quite, you know, as I said, we're only half a day into this new government. We are very interested in looking at ideas. We have quite an open mind as to how we might best use this resource. So if anyone has a particular idea, we would of how we could stimulate something that was going to be a more carbon viable alternative, we're happy to consider it.
Thank you. So my question is a little bit around, the new agricultural students that's coming in. You all know there's so much of shortage of labor for fruit picking, and at one end we have all our growers doing all the hard work, still not being able to really do that final bit of, taking the product to the market. And there's another end, we have students, an influx of students who've come in and who are studying and who spend money, and they are still not able to get the right experience from the industry. And there is, still a need for the industry, kind of a finishing school experience, mentoring. So organization exposure, industry exposures like this, is there anything really being funded from the department in terms of specifically for agriculture based grads, tertiary students? So much of youth and employment that we're talking about, but do we have any such initiatives at all?
Well, look, I'm not sure I really understand your question, but certainly one of the things that we have done since we have got back into government is really encourage the employment of PhD students and early postdocs. So we've and indeed just even more ag science grads. So certainly we have been doing far more of that since over the last 3 years, in particular within the department. Look, I think it's important to understand the agricultural industry is actually doing really well. The price of the average price of increased land values in agriculture, which is really quite a good indication of how well it's doing. In Western Australia, it's been about 27% in the last year. But there are challenges with people, right? I'm not exactly sure what the cohort you are talking about, because I don't get the impression now that ag scientists are having a great problem, young students are necessarily having a problem getting a job. I mean, one of my concerns with agricultural education is that and that's why I think it's important for us to try to get as many into the department early before they go out elsewhere, because we want to make sure that we have students that have a broad, or ag scientists that have a broad understanding of systems within farming, and perhaps a lot of industrial farming. A lot of people are involved and employed, perhaps in areas where there is an incentive to maximise the use of chemical fertilisers and herbicides, and to take a traditional industrial approach. We want to make sure that as many students as possible really have good understanding of the alternatives that are there available. We're particularly looking at how we get the kids in the ag colleges, getting them exposed to the concepts of regenerative of agriculture.
So yeah, thank you. Well, I'm talking about international students specifically who come in and who are doing courses in agricultural sciences with all our universities locally across Australia. And specifically I'm talking about the ones in Western Australia. So the cohort I'm talking about are the international students, and they do find it very challenging to actually get across to the industry experience. They do know the subject, but they do still find it challenging. So I'm just
okay,
not
well,
sure.
I'd be very interested to get the detail on that. We have gone out of our way to make sure that international students are actually allowed to do more hours of work, and I'm happy to. I've not heard that, because I just know there's such a shortage of agricultural workers, that I'm very surprised that they're not being taken up. So I'd be happy to have a look at that. Our problem is we haven't had many new, we've not been able to get international students in at the moment.
Perhaps just one more question. Paul has a question.
Thanks, Alannah. That's a great presentation. I'm wondering whether you can envisage within the Department of Agriculture, your department, say a hemp industry development group, specifically within the next term, because much of the hemp industry development and coordination has been happening in the community, which is laudable, but really, can you see us, once we've got all the research coordinated, whether there would be an industry development mechanism specifically for hemp?
Well, we did, as I said, as I referenced at the very outset, we did in fact have a hemp. We had a hemp development officer within in the department to do that coordination role for the industry, and to feed them into the other streams. I mean, there's a lot of competition out there. A lot of particular industry groupings. I think we've acted very promptly to help that. I want to ensure that we continue to have a hemp industry role within in that department. Obviously, with Andrew passing on, we're going to have to look at how we do that, but also and part of that role will be, of course, making sure the industry understands just what assistance is available through those general programs.
Thank you, Minister. We certainly look forward to all the new initiatives in this term from the government. Look forward to seeing all these. So thank you very much. Please join me in thanking firstly the Minister and as well as all the speakers from this last session who spoke on time, and we managed to complete the session on time. So thank you all our speakers.